the conduct of medical research. Now, this symposium therefore seeks to answer a very important question. What makes research ethical? What makes research ethical? This question is important not only to the current and future medical researchers, but to all of us who may be requested to be subjects in medical research projects. To help us discuss this question, we have eminent members from the Kenyatta National Hospital, University of Nairobi, Ethics and Research Committees, as well as eminent independent researchers. I request the participants to kindly record your questions during there is a QA button. Please record your questions so that you can also make your participation in this symposium meaningful. And without further ado, I would like to invite the Secretary of the Kenyatta National Hospital, University of Nairobi Ethics and Research Committee, Dr. Beatrice Amugune, to give an overview of the research proposal review process. And she will be followed by the chair of the ERC, whom I will introduce after that. Welcome, Beatrice.
Thank you very much, Professor Maya, Angela. I hope you can hear me. As you've been told, I am the secretary. So I'll just take you through the review process as we see it at the KNUON Ethics Research Committee. So as the name suggests, we take care of the research environment around Kenyatta National Hospital and the University of Nairobi. So I'll take you through, the process is rather long, but we'll try to summarize so that at least we get the key points. So as we've just been told by Angela, that to forestall research misconduct that has been reported in the past, and of course abuses on research participants, we need some sort of research oversight. And the goal is just to protect the rights and the welfare of such participants. And of course, at the end, to ensure we have some integrity of the research enterprise, so that when you get some output of a research activity, you have some trust that is being done to the best of standards. And as we are protecting the rights of these participants, we also must remember we should also protect any other than the person themselves, any identifiable data towards that participant, the community from which they come from, and even the environment you're working in. So it's not just about one person, it is the whole environment about this person. So the oversight role is taken by the Institutional Research Ethics Committees. Some people call them IREX. Here in our institution, we call it ERC. So the ERC is there just to ensure that research is planned and conducted in accordance with certain international and national laws, and of course, local regulations.
We seem to have lost Dr. Amugune, but I hope she will be able to get back on track in the shortest time. Thank you, Dr. Murugo. I've seen you in the house. Dr. Odhiambo, our panelist. Karibuni.
Hello, Dr. Angela, Professor Angela, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
now we can hear you. Thank you, Beatrice. But we have lost your
Okay.
slides. Beatrice, we can hear you, but you need to put on your slides again.
Okay, let me get them back. Can you see them now, Angela?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay. So I was just explaining that the ERC is working under the delegated mandate of the NACOSTI, the holders of the national law as regards research, the research in the country. So we work through protocol reviews. So for us to oversight, we must review protocols. And as we review, generally, we just weigh the possible harms against any benefit that the society might get from the research that is being proposed. Now, I think all of you must be conversant with the famous 4 principles of ethics in research. So as we are weighing the benefits versus any risk from the study, we always consider the autonomy, the respect for the person. So there are issues about the human dignity, the human rights, the fundamental freedoms that person has. We must respect them. Then the second principle is around beneficence, whereby the interest and the welfare of the individual is taken as paramount. So our duty is to promote the well-being of these by maximizing any benefit that arises from the study. Now, there's the aspect of justice, and this one we just ensure that there's fairness in distribution of any burdens and any benefits that comes from the research, so the participants feel part and parcel of what is going on. Then the last one, but not the least, is the non-maleficence, where we are told to do no harm, either by commission or omission. And the researcher is usually told that they should refrain from any intentional harm to the participant. And of course, it's not just physical harm. There could also arise psychological harm, even social harm. So we should always look out for those. Now, so out of that, the whole aspect of ensuring that we are protecting these participants. So whatever research we propose, we must have some key concepts that are really standing out. The first thing is that that research must have some scientific validity. So the science, the validity in science should be there. There should be some relevance, maybe scientific, clinical, even a social value arising from that such a study. There should be fair participant selection. We should have a favorable risk-benefit ratio, informed consent where necessary. We should respect that participant as the first principle had stated. And all this we can only arrive at and say your research is ethical after taking it through an independent review and followed by an approval. So timely and efficient review process is very key, because it's only through the review that we'll be able to know whether there's some scientific validity or the study is relevant or something like that. So unfortunately, delayed and ambiguous review comments is usually one of the major complaints that our clients, who are the researchers, have against us. So I'll leave that. I think somebody will cover that later on, some of the review comments that we receive. So our concern is usually the lengthy review times. And I'm sure if I asked any of you what you remember about ERC, it's the lengthy review times and maybe the comments that you got. But it's been found that these do arise because of the participants, not the participants, the researchers handing in incomplete or poorly completed applications. And sometimes it's lack of administrative support. The persons who are handling this review process, maybe they're not supportive enough. And the IREC members who are the reviewers sometimes have competing commitments, so that maybe the busiest person is the one who made a reviewer. So those are issues we need to think about. And the other thing is there's the ever expanding oversight requirements for the ERC. In the past, just used to be read and give an approval or reject, but nowadays there's more. For example, nowadays, even when you want to publish, the ERC will be called upon to give their review comments or something like that. But of course, at the end of it all, there's just too many persons trying to get through the ERC. And I think if those of you like the KNH, how many postgraduate students for the University of Nairobi, people doing research in KNH, and then people from outside this institution. So the volume of applications are just too many for the available reviewers. So why should we bother? Why should we bother whether the review takes too long or too short? Of course, the consequences sometimes are not so pleasant. So let's start with maybe a scenario where we are going to have a multi-site trial, where we are all competing. We want to study, to start the study on the same time. So you find maybe certain ERC, which is not reviewing on time, delaying the team that is supposed to compete with the rest. Another thing is, if you imagine if a study was to depend on seasonal factors, like the studies we had about COVID. Imagine if they were not approved; they're being approved now. I don't think the persons will benefit from the recruitment plans they had put in place. So when we have seasonal factors that require a quick turnaround, it becomes quite a challenge. And then where maybe we are having interventional studies, we can delay patient access to potentially effective therapies. So you delay your site, maybe Kenya, we delay Kenya accessing some of these new interventions. And of course, for students, that is those are the biggest clients, is the delay in the academic progression. So we see that timeliness in when we are carrying out the review process is crucial. But it's been found that the review process is not very well understood. That's why we have questions. You have questions, we have questions. There's actually no gold standard. There's no textbook you can go to and read and find that this is the way it should be done. But what is being accepted is that there are very many key players in as far as the review process is concerned. And for this process to be effective and efficient, we must work with some level of validated standards. So there must be some standards that have been validated that can ensure that we get to something that is good. So these validated tools come in really handy. Things like guidelines, SOPs, checklists, service charters. So when you go to the ERC or in your comments, you are being referred to a certain guideline. It's not that people just like overworking. It's that it's been found that these are standardized ways and that can assist us improve on the review process. For example, at KNH-UN, we have the guideline for proposal development, where like the sections we want covered in your proposal is clearly outlined. So if somebody now used that when they're developing their protocol, it's a bit desirable and it will have some good outcome. During COVID, we had to come up with guidelines for research during COVID. So people were supposed to use those guidelines. So the review process itself, it's a nice, very straightforward journey. You can see this arrow. where we start with a protocol being developed, it's being submitted to the ERC, there's a review process, and then a decision is made. So our interest is that it just moves as easy as I've said, but it's been found that things are not so rosy like that. So who are these stakeholders in this review process, in these 4 steps that I have put above there? We found that the first key stakeholders are the researchers together with their research teams. The second category is the research ethics unit, the ERC secretariat, the people who are working in that office. The third is the IREC members, the ERC members, the reviewers, okay? And then the fourth is the institution within which the ERC is domiciled. So how each of these undertakes their roles and responsibilities will affect the time and that the proposal will take. So we'll either do it efficiently or inefficiently. So the key stakeholders must agree to their tasks. So we'll start with the researchers themselves. They have some responsibilities and roles, and it's a very crucial role because they are the ones who initiate the process. So a researcher is supposed to develop a scientifically sound research proposal. That's where it should start. And this person, as they are writing, they should understand and apply research ethics standards and guidelines into, so they should build it into their protocol. So when they make the application, it should be thorough and complete, and they should be responsive later on when they are told to revise or a clarification is sought from them. So this is their duty. So because I said they are the initiator of the research ethics review, they must make sure that the proposal they are handing in is the best that can be, okay? And later on, once an approval has been given, that researcher, the principal investigator, should be accountable for whatever happens in that research site. So it's not just writing the ethical issues on paper, but ensuring that they'll be adhered to as the study goes on. Now, the guidelines, you ask yourself, where do they get these guidelines and so on. The guidelines are, with respect to each ERC, they should be found at the ERC. And of course, nowadays, they should be posted on websites related to the ERC. So as I'd already mentioned, things like guidelines, standard operating procedure, the ones we call SOPs, templates, because we always have a template, something we've shown them, we've developed a template where we feel is the desirable type, so that you can borrow it and use it to suit your situation. And there's so many things that can be found on the website, all at the office. So I think about the science of your study, that the person writing a proposal must be very knowledgeable in that area, so that they do a proper scientific review and also clearly state what the knowledge gap is that they are trying to address with their study. All right. So as they do that, because we all know about writing scientific work, they must ensure that there's scholarly integrity. So issues of plagiarism, must be considered as you are doing that. You should not lift other people's proposals and bring them forth and say they're yours. So when we ask for a plagiarism check, it's just we want to ensure that there is integrity in your work, and it's your work, not somebody else's. So it's been shown that if you do a scientifically and ethically sound proposal from the beginning, the chances of you having a smooth ride in the process is nearly guaranteed. All right. So take your time. So we always encourage researchers to take their time. They do a good, no hurry, don't hurry over it. It's not as simple as it looks. And of course, the times when you get review comments, as you reply to those review comments, also take some time and try to learn, why am I being asked to do this? so that later on you become an expert in that area. So what are we saying? This researcher should be in close touch with the ERC, because the ERC has a lot of information and has documents that will assist you in developing your protocol. All right. So when do you get in touch with the ERC? If you are not somebody who is always giving in a lot of proposals, then you need to go earlier than when you are trying to develop your proposal. You don't wait when you've already done it, the damage is already done, and then you bring it in. So try maybe earlier on, come find out what is expected of you, what are the standards that are necessary for a good protocol, and so that we minimize back and forth movement of your document. All right. And by just consulting the website, consulting the office, you should be able to learn about some of the ethical issues around your study. Okay. And of course, legal issues should also be thought of as you prepare your protocol. For students and of course new researchers, I've already said, please consult. For students, we expect that maybe you have a supervisor who is assisting you. We hope there's maybe you are passing through a departmental postgraduate committee or undergraduate, depending on your case, who would sort of have a peer review. They've gone through your work so that they can raise some of the issues before it is too late. So that when you are bringing for ethics review, it's a clean document. Actually, we are encouraging so that by the time it's coming, it's clean, it is scientifically sound. Okay. So the other thing, and this one sometimes is annoying, people don't just take their time to review and proofread their document. So if you've ever got a comment being told about typographical and grammatical mistakes, for a research, I think that's not something you should be very proud of. Just proofread your document. Maybe somebody else can read through, so that this reviewer we give takes less time. You make the readability a bit more comfortable for them, so that we don't start blaming each other. Okay. Just ensure that all the documents you are supposed to attach, all the information that is required through our checklists is available. And so that because we found that some missing documents, you find somebody has written a very nice proposal, and they are indicating that they'll have what do we call it? They'll be consenting by the participants, and then they've not attached the consent documents. So that is just a way. So, and when we give them what do we call it? The checklist, they think we are just being bad to them. Why are you giving them very tedious work? So the checklist is to assist you remember. Now, so that is about the researcher. Now let's go to the office, the research administrators, or we can just call them the secretariat. So these are the custodians of what is the institution requires, what documents, what procedures. So they must be able to have all this at their fingertips and communicate it effectively to the researchers. All right. And sometimes, because of their historical, what has happened in the past, they know some challenges. They know how what the challenges some of the researchers are likely, so they can share some of their past experiences with the researcher and tell them, if you do this, we are likely to get this, and so on and so forth. So the sort of they are able to assist you now have a soft landing. So prior to the submission of an application by a researcher, the secretariat will be the first point of contact with this research. I think I'd already said you come before you even bring your you bring your actual, your final bound proposal. So after an application has been brought in, they also undertake some preliminary screening review of application. And this one, they use a checklist. The checklist I've already talked about, just to make sure that it is complete. Maybe like the application form you filled, you've attached maybe your CV if you are an external person. And if you have any other prior approvals you've attached, things like that, that will just delay your application. So once it's been found, your application has been found to be complete, then the Secretariat is the one that will assign this document to the reviewers, and they'll pair up your document with maybe the sort of experts we have on board, maybe in the subject matter or other factors that can be considered. But there's also an SOP on how the reviewers are assigned. But the Secretariat is the one that will initiate that process. So after reviewers have gone through the document, of course, within a certain time, they send the comments back to the administrator. So the administrator sort of is the link between the researcher and the reviewers. So it's somebody or persons that we should take care of, because if we miss them in the link, then things won't move. After the comments are in, all the required comments are in, then the Secretariat prepares the agenda for the next meeting, so that all the review comments will be presented at the meeting for a decision to be made. So, of course, in the process, you might find maybe the reviewers are taking too long with the documents that need to be reviewed. The administrator will now take their role and try to remind the reviewer that we are waiting your comments. On the other hand, if some comments seeking clarification with the researcher are there and the researcher is taking too long to reply, also they'll get in touch. So don't think they're being a nuisance, they're just doing their work. So let's look at the roles of the reviewers. Now, this is the group that has been put in place by the institution, and they work under the committee chair, who of course has the overall responsibility for the committee. So these are persons we hope understand and consistently apply research ethics standards as they go through your document. And they're expected, of course, to respect review timelines as per the SOPs that have been put in place by the ERC. So when they are looking at your document, they evaluate all the substantive ethical issues and together with the science, so that whatever comes out is really strongly scientific and strongly ethical. All right. So their views are usually put together and deliberated on during committee meetings, which are chaired by the committee chair. Of course, our reviewers, we expect them also to be to participate in educational activities. So they're supposed to be resource persons, like in today's event. That is part of their duty. So I've talked about time frame for review. What determines how long the review should take? Every ethics committee, IREC or ERC, whatever you call it, must come up with standard operating procedures and a service charter of how long the review should take. So for us, like KNHUON, we have 4 weeks for new proposals. So the review process, as we said, the final reading is maybe what we all know like a review, but there's the initial screening that is done at the Secretariat. That one should be done on the first day. So when you bring your document with the checklist and everything, that one should be done on the first day. The next few days, up to maybe 5 days, the Secretariat will be looking at maybe in details what is maybe required in that proposal, and maybe assigning a reviewer. So the next maybe five days or so. and then of course now give to the reviewer, who I said would be given 4 weeks or something like that. So 4 weeks, as I said, would be for a new proposal. So there are other categories of proposals, as we'll see, that will have different timelines, but there's an SOP to each. So once the review comments are out and they are on the agenda, they'll be discussed at the next meeting. Okay. As a rule, our meetings are monthly, once in a month. So you can see some of the problems that we normally get. So a researcher should only expect a review response or a verdict for a proposal that has been, whose review comments have been presented in a meeting. So there are those persons, although this is not, I'm not supposed to cover that. They know that next Wednesday there's what do you call it? An ethics and monthly meeting, and they bring their proposal the Friday before. See, the Friday before, it won't even have passed through the secretariat screening. So all of us have to sort of now learn the timing, and you put all those timings into your planning. So what types of review are we talking about? Okay, so depending on the proposal and the that you've submitted, and of course certain criteria, you'll have those proposals that are reviewed at the full committee, meaning the comments from the various reviewers, who are usually at least 2, will be consolidated and discussed at the full committee. Of course, there are times when the principal investigator, the researcher, may be called in just to shed some light on some of the issues that they are proposing. So when you are called for such a full committee review meeting, just know it's because we just want some clarification. All right, it's not always, it's just once in a while. Now, other than the full committee, we have what we refer to as expedited review of proposals. These are usually proposals that generally with no more than minimum harm to research participants, and there's been a request. And of course, it's the ERC which will assess whether it fits to be no more than minimum harm. So you don't, okay, you tell us you want it expedited, but the final verdict on whether it is expedited will be done by the ERC. All right. So just like the other full committee, the document will be reviewed by at least 2 reviewers. And the only difference is that such a proposal might not have to await the full committee meeting. Maybe the decision will just be ratified at the full committee, but it will depend on the findings from the reviewers. All right, so it can be handled the secretariat plus the chairman. So the fact that you've asked for an expedited review doesn't mean it will pass. To still go through a thorough review. So depending on how you've done it, you either get it approved or it might be sent back to you for further clarification. Now, there's another set of reviews that are called exempt, all right? So there are some studies that we find that they could be exempt, but these ones will be also must be looked at by the ethics to make that decision that they are exempt. These are usually where there's no possibility of harm arising, all right? Or generally, the information you want to collect, it can be collected and it's available from the public domain. Like today, if you wanted to do a research on how many UDA MCA aspirants there are in Nairobi County, that one you don't need to give us. You just need to, it's public domain. You can do that without getting ethical approval. Now, there's something else known as accelerated review, all right? And these ones, we saw it during the COVID epidemic, where we are having a public health emergency, and the review has to be done as fast as the epidemic is emerging. So it's such a protocol, and they come up with SOPs to this regard. Because I remember during COVID, we actually had an SOP where we were required to review the protocols within 72 hours, the initial within 72 hours. So those are the different types of reviews. Now, this is the before we get an approval, but there's what we know as continuing review. This is the reviews of protocols that had been given an annual renewal, because all studies are only approved annually. So you only get 1 year approval. So even if your studies for 6 years, you keep getting annual. But before you move to the next year, we must review what you've done. So you must show us a progress report and what you intend to do in the next period. So that is a continuing review. So the work will also be reviewed. There's a small problem about people who are looking for continuing review. It is necessary for you to bring all the necessary documents, including that progress report, prior to the approval expiry. Because if there is a lapse, then any activities you carry out during the lapsed period will be considered null and void, and of course unethical. So make sure that you don't end up with those lapses. So after we've done all the review, we must communicate to you, and all communication are usually in writing. They should be in writing. Don't accept one on the phone. Should be in writing, and giving you all the conditions of the approval. And of course, when there's no approval, we always give you a summary of the comments of things we want you to address. All right. So the concerns, the gaps we felt is in your study, we always give you, and you should use them to improve. So we are saying that there are many outcomes that we can give. We can tell you your study is approved just as it is. That is usually good and very rare. If you get that, you should congratulate yourself. And then there's usually one we say approved conditionally. The ones we normally give you a very short period, like 2 weeks, because we just require a few amendments here and there, clarifications, and we know they'll take you a very short time. So quickly do it, even if you can do it in 2 days, bring it. Please don't be true Kenyans who wait for the deadline. The sooner you bring, the better you rejoin the pipe for the review process. Now, and when you do any amendments to your documents, please always clearly indicate where you've done, maybe highlight. So, and even we normally write in our cover letter, indicate even the page where you've done it. And I want to repeat this here, that, you know, when you highlight for me, if I'm the reviewer, I'll just look for those issues that I had concerns with. I've already read the document, so I only look for those, and to assist me make a quick response, please highlight for me, show me the page where you've done the work, and you'll get your reply faster than normal. But when you just throw it back at me, you want me to now read afresh, maybe at nearly a 700-page document, like the clinical trials we receive. So that is one of the reasons where you find now delays occurring. Now, we have, of course, studies that are not approved. These ones will require some additional information, and sometimes will require rewriting. So these are the ones we'll give you now a longer time, maybe give you 4 weeks to revise, okay? Because we know the sort of revision you require will require some time and some input. And of course, there are those ones who we reject, but we reject because we find it ethically unacceptable. And at the same time, we'll give you comments, and such comments are to assist you maybe now write a better proposal, and we'll accept a new proposal. Because the duty of ERC is to support and facilitate research, not to make you feel really down. And of course, if you have issues, you're allowed to come. You can be linked to persons who will assist you in improving your protocol. So after, let's assume you've got your approval. There's what we refer to as post-approval oversight, because we just don't approve and throw you to the wind. So there are some activities that follow your approved, that period, the 1 year. So we expect to get some reports from you, and also, so if time and situation arise, we might pay a visit to your site. So there are certain SOPs also, as I've said, that assist us in these areas. There are documents about update forms, material transfer, and all those things that arise. I think we all know about SAEs and adverse events. There are timelines that, so that, like some of them require that you report within 24 hours of the event occurring, others 72 hours. All those are available at the Secretariat, and the time you are being given an approval, you should be able to get all that. Things like protocol deviations, you should report violations, research-related injuries, they should be reported to us. So in conclusion, I think I've tried to go through very fast all the activities that we've seen, the roles and responsibilities that appear in this process illustrate that the review process is complex, it's a complex activity. And the ERC, the way we know it, is not a single entity, nor is protocol review an event. It is a process that we must all input. So all these multiple stakeholders bear a portion of accountability of how smoothly the research application will move through and possibly get an approval. Time is used most efficiently when we have a forward momentum, so that we are moving from one step to another towards the approval, but not when we have reverse gear, where you have to send back a document to you. And okay, when it comes back, then quickly get it back into the pipeline. So the delays we are talking about occur because of some persons along the chain, all right, not being accountable, all right? They are not discharging their responsibilities, all right? Or even the steps that is being taken do not follow a set standard. So you have this back and forth movement of documents. So you as a researcher, you as a reviewer, I don't know who else you are, or as an institution, are we making sure that we get on it, okay? We get things moving in one direction. So we must all understand and be able to operationalize our responsibilities through adherence to the set standard, the SOPs, the guidelines, and even the regulations that are in place. And of course, as an institution, we should facilitate all these people, especially the Secretariat and the reviewers, that they do a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mugune, for highlighting the process of review. I would now like to invite the chair of the KNH University of Nairobi ERC, Professor Anastasia Guante, who will highlight some of the issues that have been born from the ERC side. Professor Guante, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Mayo. And thank you for the participants sparing their time to come and join us in this very, very important symposium. I can see we are already 1,000 of us logged in to listen to this discussion. And I think that gives credibility to the need to understand research issues, and also the importance of research in terms of development of innovations and health related practices. So Thank you, Dr. Knhun, for giving a very elaborate presentation on the processes that the ERC is involved in. And I think I'll build on your presentation and probably give an indication on what the ERC also has gone through, what experiences we have had, and the very, very painful decisions that we occasionally have to make. But before I even do that, let me thank the researchers that have interacted with the Ethics and Research Committee and the good and cordial relationship that we have built over time. The KNHUN ERC is a very old, is one of the oldest committees in this country, over 40 years old. We started in a very, very humble manner. We had very, very few proposals. There was also almost total lack of understanding on what ethics was all about. And there wasn't very good working relationship between the ERC and the members of the research community. But as time has gone by, we have been able to build a very good working relationship. And I think that explains why our committee is one of those committees that have the highest number of proposals that are processed. In a year, we handle over 1,000 research proposals. And I think that is very, very heavy workload on the part of the research review members. And I give credit to those that have participated in the review process. I know many have joined the ERC in the past. They might have found some, they're going very, very rough and they have fallen off. But there are those that have managed to sustain their efforts and they have continued to serve. And I give credit to them. So next slide, please. So we are looking at what makes research ethical. And I think Professor and Dr. Knhun's presentations has indicated that there's a lot of push and pull between the researchers and the ERC members. Can I have the next slide, please? Kasungu, you are the one who is manning my slides. Kasungu, can you hear me?
Yes, I have moved, Prof. Has it moved?
No, I'm not seeing anything on my screen.
No, it has not moved, Kazungu.
Asahi?
The slides are not moving. There seems to be a problem.
And now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Kazungu, you can send to KNH Research. We try it from this side.
I'm doing that.
Sorry for that hitch, participants. We will get back shortly, and I can see we're already back. Prof. Guante, I'm sure you have things you can be telling us while the slides are being organized.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So what you are seeing here is that the ERC has managed to expand its capacity and service for ethics review. And currently, not only do we serve the Kenyatta National Hospital and University of Nairobi, but we are servicing very many other institutions, both universities and research institutions. We are also servicing NGOs, and we are also engaged in a lot of international collaborative research in terms of giving support for their review processes. And I just need to confirm to the viewers that KNHUN ERC has both local and international mandate to review all levels of researches, including the highest level of clinical trials. We have supported CAVI in the review of clinical trials involving Ebola vaccines, HIV vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines, and all manner of high-level clinical research. So we have the capacity and the ability to deliver and support our research community. And what I like is that the members of the research community are also very, very proactive, and they send in quite a lot of requests for support, and they also give very, very constructive comments to the ERC. Occasionally, of course, we get one or two that are not very, very supportive, but there is an understanding between the ERC members and the Secretariat that each one of us should be very, very accommodating and supportive, regardless of the kind of character that we are dealing with. We normally downplay outbursts from our clients, and we make sure that we treat them with a lot of dignity. We also make sure that if there is any member of the Secretariat or even the ERC reviewers that is overly and disrespectful to the researchers, some disciplinary action is taken. So there's a lot of internal self-control and self-management. And I wish to tell the participants that if you are with the KNHUN ERC, you are in very, very safe hands. Having said that, then we are discussing about ethical ethics in research. But before we go to details, let's go back, please. Next slide. Okay, we need to define what research is so that we understand exactly why we need to be very, very keen on the reviewing of the research. Can I have the slide before? Yes, so what is research? Research is defined as a class of activities that are designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. And generalizable knowledge consists of either theories, hypotheses, principles, or relationships that can be corroborated by accepted scientific observation and inference. By that statement, it means that whatever you do in terms of research must have the highest level of integrity, okay? And you cannot do that if you have research methodology that is not really detailed and does not give scientific merit to your research work. Next slide, please. Again, when you look at bioethics, here we are saying this is a system of moral principles. Now here we are bringing morals. Moral principles, rules of behavior that govern the conduct of studies that are carried out either using human subjects or even other biological systems, with the sole objective of gathering, contributing to generalizable knowledge. Now, these two slides are supposed to show you the link between science and ethics, And that means, therefore, any scientifically flawed research is unethical. And that is why, as the Ethics and Research Committee, we found it necessary to review not only the ethics, but also the science. That is why we call ourselves Ethics Research Review Committee. We look at science critically. And that has, I think, has been the bone of contention with the researchers, where they think we should not have any say in the science of the research, and that we should only be looking at ethics. Let me emphasize that a scientifically flawed research is unethical. So why review research proposals? It's important that we review research proposals so as to ensure that human participants are protected. And this is because research in itself has inherent risk and harm. Whether the risk is major or minor, it is there. Beatrice has talked about physical harm. There could be psychological harm, there could be social harm. So the purpose of review is to make sure that before the approval is given, the committee is assured that the benefits of the research will outweigh the risk. It is also important to review research proposals so that we are able to detect and curtail any potential abuse and misuse of biological materials, and also ensure transparency and accountability. Remember that there are many collaborative studies where the West would want to access the biological resources in the developing countries because they feel that we are rich, our catchment area. And we do not want to see a situation where our biological materials are misused and abused. And that is why we need to, as an ethics committee, look at your proposal and see whether you really have put all the processes in place to ensure that you guard against any potential abuse or misuse of your samples, including the need to ship out those samples. We do not allow shipment of the samples without a clear justification. We also review to ensure that there is value for investment. And we are saying that this because research in itself is capital intensive. It requires a lot of funding. It is time consuming, and a lot of human resource is invested. So with all this investment, which is a national resource, there must be value, okay? So we review the research proposals to ensure that there is value of the research before we give it approval, okay? Next. We also need to ensure that we check for equity and equality, particularly in areas where we have local investigators involved in international research, okay? Because again, we want to avoid that aspect of exploitation. Also, we need to ensure that there's adherence to international and local ethical guidelines and regulations. And this is because there are so many of them out there. And as a researcher, you might not be able to be conversant with all of them. And the ethics committee helps you to check whether whatever you intend to do is in line with the set international and local guidelines. And if not, the committee will be able to guide you to whichever regulations you need to make reference to. Next. Now, you remember Dr. Knhun Beatrice, the one who has made the presentation before me, has mentioned that there are very many key players when it comes to research, with the researcher being the initiator of the research review process. So ethical conduct should begin with the researcher, okay? And that is where a lot of effort must be spent. That means that ethics and national values should be taught to the students, including the undergraduate students, so that by the time they are preparing their research to submit to the ERC, they have a significant level of understanding on what it takes to actually develop a research proposal, okay? And this is important because across locally and across the world, ethics review has become part of the authorization process for all research projects, okay? Therefore, it is a mandatory process, and we must be able to understand the entire process and the key stakeholders so that we are able to engage them at the right time. Next. Okay, also, there is need to review research proposals because on your own, you cannot see your own mistakes, okay? And therefore, you need an external eye and also an external opinion. This gives independence to the review process. It also gives some level of impartiality in judging the merits and shortcomings of the proposed research. And also it gives an opportunity for an assessment of the features of your proposal by a wide spectrum of key players. In ethics, we have a wide range of players, including lay persons, scientific persons, ethicists. All of them are in that committee. And therefore, when your proposal is subjected to ethics review, you have that benefit of getting that broad assessment. And there's a lot of value addition. Next. So as our ERC, we function by a motto that drives our activities. And we normally say we need to protect to discover. We don't want to allow you to discover before you protect. So you protect and discover. Our vision is to be a world-class committee on ethics and a research review process. And we have a very strong mission, which means to regulate research and ensure adherence to ethical principles in order to help safeguard the dignity, rights, safety, and well-being of all actual or even potential research participants by vetting proposals and oversighting the conduct of the research. That is oversighting even after our approval. Next. So another role of the ERC is to apply ethical principles to research protocols under review. And I think Beatrice has mentioned this. So we need to determine that the risks are reasonable in light of the anticipated benefits. That is the principle of beneficence. We need to ensure that the process and documentation of the informed consents are ethically acceptable. That is the principle of respect for persons and the autonomy. Next. We also need to ensure that recruitment practices are non-coercive. You don't pay people so that they join your study. And there is respect of the privacy and confidentiality of the participants. Again, this is the principle of respect for persons. And finally, we need to ensure that we seek to ensure equity in the selection of the research participants so that there is no bias. And therefore, there is justice that is meted. Next. And we also need to ensure that research complies with the national laws and international guidelines that govern research involving human participants and biological materials. We also need to monitor research that is already in progress that has been mentioned in terms of monitoring the adverse events and that those events are appropriately reported. And also we need to ensure that the consenting process was adhered to. And we also need to develop policies that govern specific aspects of research, both at institutional, local, and national levels. So the role of the Ethics Committee is quite broad. So finally, we have this major mandate, therefore, that we are supposed to receive and review new studies, modifications to ongoing studies. We need to look at, we need to conduct review of continuing research, including progress reports from study investigators when they give their progress reports before we give them the annual renewal. We need to oversight the conduct of research, including observation of the consent process on the ground. If we make a site visit to your research facility, we might actually insist that we see how you document the consent. Finally, we have the mandate which allows us to place restrictions, including suspending or terminating studies if those studies have been found to be conducted not in accordance with the ERC requirements, or if the studies have been associated with unexpected serious harm to the research participants. So we can actually come and close your study site if you are convinced that what you are doing is not as per the set guidelines. Next. Next slide, please. Okay, so what have been our experiences and challenges that we have faced as an ERC during the review process? So I'll look at this in sections. We shall first of all look at what do we go through when we are looking at the proposal itself. What we have come across is that quite a number of proposals presented to us are of poor quality. There is no good adherence to the set format, although the format is there and can be accessed by researchers even from our website. We receive documents that are not even paginated, they have no page numbers, so making references becomes very difficult. We find that the documents chapters that are not even numbered, sections and subsections are not numbered, figures and tables sometimes are not numbered. Okay, then there is no serialization. So making reference even when one is doing the comments becomes very, very difficult. Poor quality of the language that is used also becomes troublesome in the sense that when one is presented with a poor quality proposal with poor language, it becomes difficult to read, follow, comprehend, because of the poor grammar, the typo errors, the poor sentence construction. So comprehension of the proposal becomes very difficult. And this becomes even a cause for delay, because the reviewer might get very, very upset with that proposal and put it aside and probably create time later on to read it. A proposal that is well written becomes easy, it is good to read, you enjoy reading and reviewing that proposal. We also have come across areas where we have no or incomplete endorsement of the documents, which means the submitted documents are not even signed by the PI and even the other members of the research team. Okay, and again, then you ask yourself, is there ownership of this document? And why should I even review it if it has no ownership? So a reviewer might be tempted to turn back that document to the reviewer. We have seen documents with very poor scientific soundness, okay, where we have missing information relating to critical analysis of literature. There is no identification of clear research gaps. So you wonder, how are we able, how is this person able to come up with any meaningful problem statement, or even significant come up with identifying the significance of the study, okay? Very poor objectives are set, which means that the objectives are not smart. And if the objectives are not smart, then you tend to suspect that the researcher is not very, very sure of what she or he intends to do. The standard design has been a major, major problem, okay, where the researchers, most of them, particularly the students, are not able to understand the various types of standard designs and which one would be best suited for their study. And again, this becomes an aspect of concern. And this is an issue that is commonly raised in almost 3/4 of the proposals that we review. Definition of the study population and also derivation of the sample size, again, is a key concern that has hindered rapid approval of the research proposals. Because again, the researchers do not seem to understand that the computation of the sample size and the formula to be used for computation of the sample size is guided by the standard design and the type of population that you intend to study. Okay. So again, we have come across proposals that the standard area and the standard size are not even rationalized or justified. A person says that I'll conduct my research in Kenyatta National Hospital, full stop, without telling us where in Kenyatta National Hospital and why that site is most suited for the study. We also have seen areas where we have unclear recruitment strategy. Okay, a person comes up with an inclusion and exclusion criteria, okay, listed somewhere in the document as a section, but when they come to the section on recruitment strategy, that criteria is not actually followed, okay? Again, when you come to the aspect of ethical considerations within the proposal, you find that the consenting process, when they talk about it, they are not defining how, why, when, where, and by whom that process will be carried out. So again, you ask yourself, does this person know exactly what they want to do? Okay, and will they be able to protect the research participants? Okay, then we have the unclear participant sampling procedure. There are times when stratification of the sample is required, but sometimes this is not even shown. You are just given a total sample size, and there is no process of stratifying that sample across the different study sites if you are using multiple sites. Study procedures, sometimes, particularly for collecting of the biological samples, sometimes are ill-defined. And even the process of managing the samples after collection is not well defined, both at the local level and even when it comes to exchange and sharing of the samples across laboratories, whether local or international, including export of the samples. Okay. Even the disposal of the samples is not defined, because if you are using a sample, you have analyzed the sample, there must be a way in which that sample will be, any remnants of that sample will be disposed. This needs to be stated. Most of the times it's not. Data collecting procedures, again, this is an area of concern where people are not able to define exactly what type of data is being collected and being able to give us the appropriate tools that will be used to collect that specific type of data, and that those tools have been pre-tested, in a manner that will give those tools validity. This information is usually left out. And then the aspect of data analysis and data management, again, this is a major concern, particularly for students, including postgraduate students, where they do not seem to appreciate the different types of different methods of data analysis depending on the type of data that has been generated. So the appropriate analytical methods based on the type of data should be presented. Okay. The aspect of interpretation of the data again becomes a major issue, because if you are not able to analyze and interpret the data as presented, and you are not using the relevant methods, it means that you are unlikely to draw appropriate conclusions and recommendations from your study. Okay, the research outcomes and the significance of the study is an aspect which is usually downplayed in the research proposals, because you need to indicate the anticipated research outcomes and also the significance of the study, so that the reviewer is able to see the value of your research. You also need to ensure that you have given us an appropriate resource dissemination plan, because you don't want to gather data and you have it just put on the shelf. We must know how that data will be disseminated. Now, so that is as far as the research proposals is concerned. When it comes to the aspect of the principal investigator and the research team, what we have come across is that we have received documents where the roles and responsibilities of the members of the research team are not defined and stated. It's just a list of those people. And then you wonder, why do I approve a proposal where I have a team of people and I don't know what the value they're adding to this work? In most cases, the CVs are not even provided, okay? Again, you cannot be able to confirm the credibility and the qualifications of the people that are listed. We have situations where unqualified, inexperienced, and untrained persons have tried to front themselves as principal investigators of research. And yet, when you look at their credentials, they cannot actually be able to carry out that study. We have instances where good practice certificates, for example, good clinical practice certificate or good laboratory practice certificates are required, but they are not attached, or probably the people have not even done those trainings. Also, the PIs and the research team members in most cases, do not append signatures on their proposals. We have also come across situations where the members of the research team, some of them are removed, or there is even a replacement, or there is even an introduction of a new member to the research team without any adequate justification. And then you wonder, why is this happening? And that must be justified. Otherwise, it becomes an ethical issue. We also have seen uneven and unfair representation of local researchers, particularly in international collaborative research. And we have seen situations where the prominent roles of the foreigners in international research, collaborative studies is given to those people. And yet the local PIs can actually perform those roles. Next. For the academic proposals, the concerns that we have is that we normally receive late submissions of the proposals with very tight deadlines. You are being given a proposal in probably April for a person that would wish to graduate in August. So you wonder when that proposal will be reviewed, approved, and the person will be able to carry out the study, analyze the data, write his report, present, and graduate. So the timelines become very, very tight. Documents, again, are not endorsed by the supervisors and sometimes even by the students themselves. And these are for academic proposals, which means, again, these documents do not have any ownership. Appending a signature and dating a proposal means that you have actually, you are confirming that you have read that proposal and you have approved it for submission to the next stage. We have also seen documents with a very high similarity index, which is indicative of plagiarism, which is unethical. Poor quality proposals, academic proposals, again, giving an indication that there is inadequate input by the supervisors. And a supervisor is there to mentor and guide the student, but this role is not being adequately played. So overall, we are sensing some level of poor understanding of the science of proposal development and scientific writing for the academic proposals, and also poor understanding of how to set the SMART objectives, how to come up with the research design, sample size computation and data analysis methods, etc. for the academic proposals. So something needs to be done for our students. We have also seen situations where after the ERC gives their comments, there's an undue delay in addressing those ERC comments and resubmitting the revised proposal. A student that is supposed to resubmit the proposal within 4 weeks, they take 3 months. And when you send a reminder to them, there is no response. For the clinical trials, the issues that have come up are that we have seen principal investigators that do not have requisite qualifications and experience and training, and those cannot qualify to run a clinical trial. Okay, we have also seen teams of research members, and when you look at even their CVs, you find that these people are untrained and they cannot effectively support a clinical trial. Okay. We have seen also incomplete clinical trial dossiers submitted where we do not even have the investigator brochures and other supportive documents. For the clinical trials, we have had 1 or 2 situations where we have requested for a country-specific protocol, and the investigators are not very keen to provide such a document. And this is a very critical document. Also, lack of participant insurance cover for clinical trials, particularly for those clinical trials that carry significant risk, interventional clinical trials. These insurance covers are not provided. When we request for them, we are told that the NHIF cover for the patients is adequate, and that is not right. Okay, there must be insurance cover to cover the participants or any research-related harm. We have also seen situations where there is reluctance to set up a data safety monitoring board for interventional clinical trials. And this is a committee or a board that is very, very critical in oversighting the clinical trial and confirming that the study can continue, or if they detect major or significant risks to the participants, they can order suspension of the research. So data safety monitoring board is critical for high-risk studies. For the clinical trials also, we have seen situations where we have lack or even inadequate safety monitoring systems, particularly the SAE reporting tools are not given, okay? And there is no even statement on how SAEs that are reported will be managed. We have seen also consent documents presented that are participant and friendly, because they are complex to understand. The language that is being used is highly technical, okay? And even when there is an effort to interpret the language, the interpretation is very, very poor, okay? If the study is being carried out in Kisumu, someone is trying to interpret the consent document into the Luo, and when you give that document to a person that understands the Luo, they will tell you, these statements are not communicating. Now, the clinical trials, we have also seen a lack of clear systems and procedures for managing biological samples, particularly when there are situations for shipment of those samples. There is lack of a documented strategy to ensure technology transfer or any key benefit to Kenya. We don't want a clinical trial or collaborative studies being carried out in Kenya where we cannot show any benefit to the country, particularly in terms of technology transfer. There is a lack of documentation on post-trial benefit for participants and even for the community. This must be stated in the document. We see situations where there is unclear benefit sharing, including intellectual property rights, okay, and also commercialization of any innovations and benefit sharing thereafter. This is not indicated in some clinical trials. And when you read it through, you can actually see this clinical trial is likely to come up with an innovation. And that is not stated. Next. There is lack of accountability and protection of the local primary data, because if you're engaged in international collaborative studies, you want to ask yourself, the data that I've gathered from Kenya, how shall I be able to protect it? Okay. Lack of data sharing and resource dissemination strategy is also a key concern for clinical trials. And also lack of vague post-trial participant follow-up for long-term research related effects is sometimes missed out. Next. For collaborative studies that involve north to south partners, a few things that have come up include inflated project budgets that is sometimes not rationalized, and you want to ask yourself, how will all this money be used? There is inequitable remuneration of members of the research team, usually with the southern members being paid peanuts, while their counterparts are being overpaid. We also find situations where there is undue pressure on the ERC members to complete the review process, because these studies are brought in with very strict timelines, and people are being pushed and told that, oh, if you don't give us an approval, we are going to lose on their funding. So there's a lot of unnecessary pressure on the researchers. Again, the issue of management of biological samples is a concern, where we do not get clear reasons as to the shipment of the biological samples to other countries. There are no accountable systems. There are no processes for sample recall, okay? And also archiving and disposal plans are missing. Next. Again, cultural differences are not usually addressed in some of these collaborative studies. And, again, we need to have that addressed before we can give approval. Incomplete participant information, particularly with respect to the language that is being used. Interpreters identification, particularly in the field, okay, where you have interpreters being used in the field. Again, you find that some of these interpreters are community persons that are very well known, and they can interfere with the quality of data. Okay, and then finally, we have an equal level of technology transfer, and I think I've mentioned this before. economic differences, particularly when it comes to participant compensation, compensation levels. And sometimes you find that this might border to coercion if it is not properly regulated. Next. We have seen situations where we have use of vulnerable groups, particularly when you have studies that are involving North and South partners, and they think the South is very needy of funding, and therefore they will not protect their vulnerable groups, and they will allow access to them without any hindrances, and this is wrong. Then we have seen, again, studies that are being proposed to be done in the developing countries, where particularly specialized research, stem cell, embryonic and genetic research, and we do not seem to have strong local regulations, and therefore this opens an opportunity for exploitation. The intellectual property issues again come into play, and the big brother syndrome, okay, is something that we have to deal with as an ERC, and we are there to make sure that at least the big brother syndrome is contained, and our local research teams and the local communities are not exploited. Next. Next. Okay, then now selection of the PI. They not always want to give to be the leaders, okay? And the Southern partners are used as spanner boys, and as a ERC, we don't allow that unless there is a strong justification. We always want to have a local PI. The use of Southern partners, the use of Southern research participants as guinea pigs, where there is no evidence as to why this study needs to be done in the developing countries and not in the northern countries. Again, this becomes an issue, and we need to check whether there is literature to confirm that this study is also has either been done in the north, or the collaborative study will have sites in the north and also sites in the southern partner countries. That means that the ethics committee provides that balance. Data management, a collection and storage and use of the primary data, again, ownership, manipulation of data, custody of the data for multiple sites, and declared duration of storage for future use, because most of these samples are being taken to the north and we are not being told exactly how they will be managed. They talk about indefinite storage periods without telling us what is it that they are going to do with those samples. And here that becomes very, very critical for us as an ERC. Insurance cover for the participants needs to be provided. Next. We also come across modifications of these collaborative studies where they insist that they want to introduce nested studies within approved researches without the justification. They even introduce students in the research, and they want the students to carry out these nested studies without the students developing their own proposals, okay? And such students will not be able to learn the art of developing and steering a research project. The students' research are approved in the north, and the students are also sent to Kenya just for administrative clearance, which means that the student is registered in the northern country in a university in the north. They are sent to carry out research in Kenya, and all you are being told to do is give them administrative clearance. That will not be allowed to happen. Then we also have the requirement for adherence to KNH-UN ERC proposal format. You remember there is a proposal Beatrice talked about, but when we have the North-South collaboration, they don't want to adopt the format. They come up with their own format and they don't want it to be critiqued. The research information dissemination strategy has always been lacking in most cases. And when it comes to publications, we always find that the southern partners are shortchanged because most of the data is kept in the north, and they can even come up with their own publications without even giving reference to the local researchers. Again, that is unethical and it should not be allowed to happen. So over time, we have come across a few disciplinary cases that we have managed, and I'll just give you maybe one or two of them. We have had a case where some researcher was able to fraudulently access archived hospital patient clinical samples, and this person used those samples for research purposes. The person even managed to ship out those samples without the requisite institutional approval and without even the donor approval. You remember these are clinical patient samples that were kept in the hospital, okay? So this is a person that we strongly felt that they flouted the good laboratory and good clinical practices. They also interfered with the hospital clinical specimen archives and therefore opened the institution to potential litigation. So this was a serious case of a research misconduct. Next. We have also come across situations where a PI decided to recruit new participants and collected data when the study had already been closed for data collection. Again, that was detected, it was unethical, and that study was cancelled. Okay, we have also come across a situation where a researcher has amended and used data collecting tools without seeking ERC approval of the amendments before implementation. Again, when this is detected, a study is cancelled. We have also come across a study where the PI accessed a community for research purposes without necessary approvals and clearance, including clearance from the community gatekeepers. Okay, we have also seen a situation where a person decided to conduct research without ERC approval, and when they were caught, they decided now to come to the ERC seeking approval for an already done study. Another case of interest is a forgery that we detected sometimes last year, where official ERC documents were forged at River Road, okay? And this person presented these ERC approval documents as authentic documents to the institution. And this matter was reported to us, and the action has been taken. And the consequences are that the student that was the leader has already been expelled from the university, and the other 4 or 5 accomplices have already been suspended from the university. Next. A few proposals have also been rejected. For example, we have rejected a proposal after confirming that the study was carried out without approval. We have also rejected a number of proposals proposing for clinical trials that were proposed to be carried out by postgraduate students. And this is because the ERC felt that they were not qualified. We have also withdrawn a study approval after we noted that there was irregular conversion of an approved study to a PhD, and the PhD was submitted to the university, okay? And then thereafter, we are now being told to go and review the proposal and allow for the conversion of the PhD. It should have been the other way around, okay? Request for the conversion from the ERC, prepare your PhD when the ERC is aware of what you are doing, and then submit a proposal, not retrospective. Finally, we understand that was rejected when recruitment and the collection of vaginal samples from vulnerable populations, mainly the pregnant and adolescents, could not be justified. So that study could not be allowed to go through, and so on and so forth. We are just sharing with you what we have come across. And in conclusion, what I would like to tell you is that adhere to the set guidelines and protocols, submit a scientifically and ethically sound research proposal, give adequate lead time for the ERC to review, and by so doing, you minimize the pain of push and pull, okay, between yourselves and the ERC. It will be smooth sailing. We all will be left with very, very good feelings and positive thoughts. And looking forward to further interaction with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Karani, Professor Guante. My name is Miriam Wagoro, and I'm going to moderate the panelist section. We have 4 esteemed panelists. We have Dr. Walter Odhiambo, the chair of the Dental Sciences. We have Dr. Patrick Burugu. We have Dr. Sarah Wachira, and we have Dr. Sarah Obara. So we shall start with Dr. Walter Odhiambo. Over to you now, Dr. Odhiambo, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Miriam Ogoro. And I wish to thank the 2 speakers, Beatrice Amugune, Dr. Beatrice Amugune, and Professor Guante from the ERC for the comprehensive presentations on the ethical issues in medical research and what the ERC requirements are. I'm delighted that I was invited to this panel. And I think when I met Dr. Knhun, when he told me that he would like me to come as a panelist, it was because there has been a lot of discussion about the ERC within our circles, especially in the, I think in the recent past, there was a bit of a discussion in the WhatsApp group at the KNH UN WhatsApp group. And some of the issues of concern have been addressed here fairly well. So let me just go straight to some of the areas where I would like to comment. And Dr. Beatrice Amugune had indicated earlier on in her presentation that there is really no gold standard when it comes to ethical issues. And this being the case is some of the reasons why we in the academic circles sometimes also have some issues that we would like addressed. And I'm glad this platform has been created, and I hope that we will be having regular platforms where we can engage with the ERC so that it does not feel like we are dealing with a closed members club. As had been expressed, sometimes we receive comments that could be regarded as ambiguous, and then and also the delays, which has been explained by Dr. Amugune, largely that because they come from incomplete and poorly done forms that we are supposed to complete. And this, you have also highlighted that it's something that the Secretariat can actually assist in reducing, because the Secretariat can always do with their checklist and immediately return what does not comply, so that it does not become as the cause of delays. There is one area where I would like them to comment, and which is also important, that when the reviewers in the ERC look at the scientific aspects, they should be ready to have researchers or PIs or whoever is presenting the proposal disagreeing with their view, because as most reviewers would accept, sometimes in a scientific platform, especially when there is a new innovation, you have things that go against the conventions. And this, we know that sometimes things that go against the convention are resisted naturally. And you will find that in such situations where the researcher or the PI has no access to whoever has reviewed the paper, they may actually disagree. And sometimes it is true. It is possible the reviewer might actually not even understand what the researcher was doing. And that provision of disagreeing should, with regard to ethics, and this is where I would like to comment as well, you may not have the right to disagree with ethical issues, especially the 4 principles that were highlighted earlier. Those principles of the right of the patient to consent to a study. These are probably almost absolute, and the one of cause no harm to the subjects, research subjects. That is probably also absolute, and even also the fact that there should be justice, in which case there should be equity. The research should not benefit just some people and harm others. So those are probably absolute. But when we come to how science comes into play in this, you will see that issues, for example, that are fairly scientific in their approach are not necessarily considered ethical. And for example, some cultural community in the world or societies may even consider research on stem cells as not ethical. And we all know that these are issues which are being debated all the time. And yet in science, we would not have any issue why you would consider something like stem cell research not being right. So you will find that with regard to ethical issues, there are certain aspects where it might not be right to simply say that the ERC must plunge itself into the scientific areas. And another area I wanted to give is that in as constituted here in our ERC, you probably have no platform where you can argue your case with the committee. Yet in a truly scientific platform, there is a peer engagement which is created, and the researcher is allowed and can defend their work. And so I think this is something we have to look at vis-a-vis why sometimes we feel that the ethical review team or the committee should actually not usurp the role of supervisors. Why does this bring conflict? You will agree with me that all the time you do a study, if you introduce a third supervisor where there were 2, the third supervisor will come up with new issues. And sometimes those issues might even conflict with those of the previous 2 supervisors. And if you add a 4th one, they will still disagree, and you will end up with a researcher therefore moving in circles. And this is why, again, some of us have a feeling that the hazy boundary that converts the ERC committee members to almost become supervisors is making researchers in our institutions face quite a bit of a challenge. The other issue that I would have liked to have addressed by the committee is where the stakeholders come in or input in these regulations or guidelines, and also whether guidelines are the same as rules, because guidelines are flexible and therefore accommodate slightly running out of the rail. However, rules are strict. So we talk about guidelines, and this, I believe why the ERC talks about guidelines is recognizing that different institutions have different formats of doing their proposals. For example, a proposal being done by the University of Nairobi has a certain format that they discuss. A proposal being done by Moi University might have a different format. a proposal done from community might have a different format. This institutional format should, I believe, still remain systematic, where you can pick the methodology, you can pick all other aspects of objectives and all other aspects, for example, study design and so on, without necessarily insisting that they must be in chapter 1, must be this, chapter 2 must be this, because you will find that in one institution, they combine introduction and literature review as one, and then continue to the methodology. And I believe that a ERC should have that flexibility of seeing that the researchers have actually brought in their introduction and literature review, even though it has not been divided into chapter 1 and chapter 2. So that kind of flexibility allows institutions not to become what I have described as donkeys or zebras with one color. It allows competitiveness and diversity in research, which is good for new ideas and development. And people can say that the model of this institution looks better than this because of A, B, C, and C, or captures this than the other one. So I believe that as academic institutions, we sometimes should have that element of allowing variety, and that sometimes requires that we have a flexible ERC, so long as the presentation is systematic and captures the areas that are key to the study. Finally, I think the other issue I would have liked to raise with the ERC is that there is a reason why the ERC in this situation is Kenyatta National Hospital and University of Nairobi ERC. And so it has stakeholders from these two institutions. And even when you are recruiting, I believe you try to have interest of the University of Nairobi and Kenyatta National Hospital at your disposal. It is important that this is captured in the way we operate, so that, for example, the CV of the University of Nairobi researchers and workers is also in the same website with the ERC and KNH, where the KNH and UN ERC is. So really, I think it is easy. There is no need for the staff, the academic staff of the University of Nairobi or the consultants of the Kenyatta National Hospital, whose CVs are also uploaded in the same website, to have to provide their CV when this is demanded of researchers from outside of these institutions. Because if there is a Professor Guante of the University of Nairobi, if I Google now and go to the University of Nairobi website, I will find out our profile there and our CV. So these are some of the areas where I believe we can still find how best we can bring them together. It finally brings me to an area also where I wanted to give a bit of a concern about is, for example, good clinical practice certificate as a requirement for doing research. Again, by a consultant practicing in Kenyatta National Hospital with who is registered by the board at the by the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council, who is seeing patients at the Kenyatta National Hospital and teaching at the Kenyatta National Hospital, or the University of Nairobi for that matter, professor or consultant who is seeing patients in these institutions. I believe or think that it is almost a paradox that they should still, the same committee should demand of them as a good clinical practice certificate, which I think is necessary for anybody coming from outside this institution, but it might be that it is demanded by other institutions. And I don't mind if, for example, I wanted to go and do a study in the UK and they demand that I provide a good clinical practice certificate. I think there's justification for that. But maybe we need to create our own small document that can capture the same without necessarily insisting that a consultant who is practicing in our institution is also required to complete this form. Otherwise, I want to commend the work the Ethics and Research Committee is doing, and know it is a difficult job. Reviewing proposals for purposes of patient safety and standards is not easy, and I think we should commend them and continue to support their work as much as possible. But I also believe that they should be open to more ideas so that innovation is not killed by extreme rigidity. There has to be an element of supporting researchers, and the feedback should not just be of negative of what you should not do or what you did badly. The feedback to the PIs or to the researchers should also include what is commendable in their proposal. Thank you very much. I think that is my response for now. I've taken probably more than the time I was given, but I really wanted to share that. Miriam?
Thank you very much, Dr. Walter Odhiambo. And as we thank Professor Guante, sorry, I called you Professor Kareni, Professor Guante, sincere apologies, and Dr. Beatrice Amugune for the very comprehensive and informative presentations. We shall take questions at the end, and I request our esteemed guests, those who are writing their questions on the chat box system, please transfer them to the Q&A session. So Dr. Walter has raised several issues, and I know that we have ERC members. I'm sure they have taken notes, and at the opportune time, they will raise their hands and they will be able to answer. Now we go now to Dr. Patrick Mburugu, who is a consultant surgeon at the Kenyatta National Hospital. Dr. Mburugu, over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I'm delighted to be here among everybody today to see how to facilitate our research and investigative issues going forward. So because my classmate has taken 3/4 of the time, I will try to be as brief as possible. So to start with, I will not repeat what Walter has said. Walter has actually elucidated everything that I had to say. And I could actually just say I'm not saying anything more, because all he has asked is what I had asked in my mind. But going back to what Dr. Mugune said, Dr. Mugune, in the lead up to her talk, told us exactly what we have been asking about the ERC. She talked about a lot of things that we have been asking about the ERC. The ones that I remember are, for example, when you get the reviewers not reviewing on time, when you get the reviewers saying that they are overwhelmed, when you get the reviewers asking questions and you cannot, you know, if they do not understand the subject matter, because some of the things that you get in the letters that they send would actually have been sorted out in a direct one-to-one talk. If they are not understanding what I was trying to say, they should call me, because they know my number, they know who I am, and they know where I am. They should call me and ask me, what did you want to say here? Because by the time you get a letter, it's typed, it's retyped, it goes to the ERC, it's sent to you, and by they send them by slow mail. They send them by snail mail. I was looking at my emails today, and there's an email that said, come and get your letters. And you wonder, what exactly are we talking about? Anyway, so Dr. Knhun showed us that the ERC actually knows what ails it, what brings a conflict between between researchers and the committee. So so that got me wondering about these reviewers. Who are they? What are their qualifications? Do they have the necessary qualifications to actually review a paper? What are their publications themselves? How many publications do they have? Is it just enough being a university professor or a director or whatever of Kenyatta National Hospital or whatever? What qualifications does the committee take into account before allocating somebody a reviewer, privilege? Do these reviewers have any training in research methodology? And this is where I want to differ with Walter, because Walter said the CGP, the certificate of good clinical practice is not necessary. I think it's necessary because I was made to undergo it by force. I'll tell you how I underwent it by force. It's opened your eyes to a lot of things that you thought you knew, but you don't actually know. I don't think by just being a Kenyatta consultant or a University of Nairobi consultant, you have special access somewhere in your mind to this, because the last time we were taught about this was third year. That's when we were taught biostatistics and all that. So I think it is important that these people have some level of certified training in research methodology. So about the clinical practice certificate, good clinical practice certificate, there was a study called the ASOS2, African Surgical Studies Outcome or something. I mean, African Surgical Outcome Study. There was 1 and 2. I was asked to be a PI in 2 solely because I was the HOD in surgery, and that's why it was being undertaken. I had no interest at all in it. And for a study to go through, the PI of that department had to have the certificate of good clinical practice, and I was made to go through it. But this study passed without any question. And then I was asked to do another study about stents in urology, which was in my own words, these are my own words, it was actually killed. So for example, you wonder when somebody asks you to provide a sample size for a registry observational study, yeah, do they really know what they're talking about? When they talk about describe follow-up visits and all that, and it is purely described in the protocol. There are case report forms which say on which day this part should be filled and this part should be filled. And then you say separate the two. Now, what about if you lose the first part? Knowing that Kenyatta is a paper-based hospital. So you tell us separate the case report form for the first visit and the case report form for the second visit. What about if you lose the first one? When you start asking us something like, the first question in your letter to me is, what is Castor EDC? Now, that really, if you're not killing this study willingly, it's actually murdering it. I'm assuming you're computer literate. Why don't you just go to the computer and find out what Castor EDC is? Because you're asking me, how will you handle your data? And we are saying we'll use the Castor EDC as our data collection and synthesizing tool. So there are so many things that we want to ask, but because we don't have time, I will keep quiet there and let maybe us to be elucidated to a bit more. But I'm hearing things today that I've never heard before, that we should get insurance for study participants. How many of us have ever gotten insurance for our study participants? And not every study is funded. Yeah, not every study is funded. Half of the things that we are being asked is who is, there's something called gold old humanity, where somebody says, I will ask my registrars or I will ask the surgeons who are doing this procedure to just fill in a form. It doesn't need money. Maybe it might need money to print the papers, but not everything needs money. Not everybody is funded by Melinda and Bill Gates. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mbrugu, for those insights and comments into the ERC process, which have been very well received. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Sarah Wachira. A lot of issues have been raised by Dr. Odhiambo and Dr. Mbrugu. Sarah, do you have anything else to add? Any new issue that you'd like to bring to the attention of the ERC?
Thank you, Dr. Amayo. I am here. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Extremely insightful presentations. Allow me to say in 1 minute that you need to do more of this awareness creation for researchers so that it's easy for everyone to know what is the expectation. I think that really is a starting point. And once we have that expectation, it's easy for even us to work in collaboration to assist ERC and vice versa, so that we can eventually have an understanding of a way forward, because at the end of the day, it's about our country, it's about being able to have outputs that are going to add value in terms of decision making. Maybe the only thing I'd want to add is could you consider doing a video guide of the process and embed it into your website, so that somebody wanting to start the process of submitting a proposal, they can watch what exactly goes on, what is the expectations, what are the possible timelines, and that way it creates an awareness. And now that we're in the digital era, we can make use of that platform to create more awareness. I must say that in terms of my experience, I got quite like 2 pages of comments, and for me, they really added value. So I want to say that there was definitely value addition from what ERC gave me, and it opened my eyes to things I had not thought about in my research. So I believe that really helped me to fine tune my proposal. I took long, like almost exactly 8 weeks, which was the number of days you should take maximum to resubmit the proposal. And I think that for me, those comments really added value. I felt discouraged when I read the 2 pages, and I wondered whether I could actually be able to figure them out. But after sitting down for many days trying to figure out what each meant, I was able to get back and get the approval within a 3-week period once I resubmitted. So I want to believe that it's not all struggle and difficult. There are also good experiences. And for me, I would say that the person who reviewed my work really added value. And as much as it's not everything that was said that was what I was able to to respond to, I was able to explain myself what I really meant. And of course, it's always said that if somebody else reviews your work and they can't understand it, chances are that even when you publish it, they may not understand it. So for me, I would say I had an experience. It wasn't easy. I took a whole 7 months trying to get through with the approval. The timelines are short. We don't get full admission into the university without approval or ethics approval. So that meant I had a whole year waiting, almost 1.5 years waiting to get into the university as a full-time candidate. So let me just stop it there. However, and above what my colleagues have said, I must say that I still valued those comments that I received from my document. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah Wachira. We'll now call upon Dr. Sarah Obara. Please, we are running out of time, so just take 2 minutes. In the meantime, I request the ERC members who are here to be able to respond to the Q&A And yeah, to be able to respond to the questions that have been asked, because we may not have time to run through all of them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, my presenters. I would like to kindly be allowed to share my screen because there are only 2 slides, kindly, as a student representative, because most of the participants on board are students at lower levels, at undergraduate levels. We've called them in. So I just want to show something kindly. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Mugune, Prof. Guante, Dr. Mugune, and the rest of the presenters. Thank you so much. I am Sarah Obara from the University of Nairobi, currently doing my research, and you can see the title there, working on autism spectrum disorder children in KNH. Yes. I indeed wanted to just pass through my students who are here with me, the ones in lower levels that we teach, to tell them that indeed, this is a body that is very, very important, because when you come in as a freshman into research, you don't know how much that vulnerable person needs protection. And that is maybe the role that you need to understand, that the way you view somebody vulnerable in a clinical setup or whichever aspect needs to be guided. And that is where the ERC comes in. So their motto is to protect and discover. That is always to look at the needs of this client or our clients or patients first. Now, what I can go straight to is what probably that I had left out in my view of what maybe ERC is all about, or in clinical research. I did not really know the importance. And in most of the times when we do research, we do not look at the importance of those documents that are at the back of the proposals, you know, the informed consent documents. Normally, when you're working in community setups or non-invasive research or non-clinical research, you think it's just a, you know, a garbage like type of attachment at the back that is taking your time and your energy. But now when I go into through the ERC, I am able to know the importance of informed consent, importance of assessment of risks and benefits, and selection of the human subjects or whoever that you're looking at. My subjects, my research mainly has got the 3 elements, whereby there's the element whereby we look at the children in the institution, that is a hospital, and it is linking up to academia, whereby it's linking up with the processes in university and the food industry. Now, the challenges that are faced in this dilemma of academia, ERC student interaction, I want to enumerate them just for the sake of the young scientists on board, and I'll take a very short time and then give proposed solutions. The adult learning dynamics, in my view, in my case, because I'm Exhibit X today, Sarah Cherere is Exhibit X. I started my research as an adult learner, entered university recently, and now adult learning dynamics are what? Immediately after starting my research concept formulation, I got a baby. In between, I got a major surgery. And all this was blending in with the proposal development, defenses, and, you know, even submission. Now, when I came into this picture, Prof. Guante has put it perfectly. There was a lot of big brother syndrome, whereby I was told to fold my sleeves, take up a panga and a rungu, because I'm going to face a dragon called ERC, you know, ethics committee. And this came from the old school professorship, whereby they told us that they trash everything that is given to them. They are always defensive. And by looking at it now, when I'm giving the solutions, I'll give you now the disclaimer and the picture that I now have of the current ERC. Supervision and coordination was also an issue, and academic bureaucracies, whereby you can't push. You have 3 supervisors, they are staggering maybe the concept note is already, almost being submitted, this other person is pulling, and that was a conflict in my development. We had stereotypes and prejudices about ERC and the process of submission, because we came in with people thinking that we are fighting an enemy that is always out to shoot us down. And I think that has come from the other presenters as well. And there were issues on my part, because I'm Exhibit X, on financing my research, whereby these processes, either because of due to some many factors, probably your process is on at the ethics department, and at that point, maybe research, you have not been able to really be clear whether you're getting the funding or it's pulled away or something happens, and that was a really shaky point for me. Then initially there was lack of a virtual or a process whereby we could interact directly with the ERC, and that was a challenge before. Then number 6, there was a lack of a contact, as in during my time when I started this contact, there was no person that was linking us between our departments and colleges and ERC. And also there's of course, later on I found that there was a little bit of bottlenecks I found with the research funding policy of KNH now that we are affiliated to UON. My proposed solutions quickly are, these institutions and funders should include adult-friendly policies to aid some of us who are adult learners to fit in. Many others have been said, but one of them probably would be raising age requirements or including, engaging female participants of research, which I see other things like Carter are doing now. Other researchers are now looking out to the vulnerable community groups. And number 2, the supervisors.
Sorry, Sarah, for interruption. Kindly
Yes.
just summarize key points, please.
Okay, the key points should be, okay, the other challenge and the proposed solution was looking at ways to link up ERC with our supervisors that came out, so that they are at the same level, so that nobody is shooting the other. Then we should have public sensitization. Finance also can also be channeled through these affiliate bodies. And then ERC to look at ways of probably electronically putting in a database. Then we should have a contact person from ERC, and then the funding policy should also include others. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for summarizing. I request our ERC members in here to respond to the questions asked in the Q&A session by typing their responses. In the meantime, I'm calling upon them also to raise up their hands if they want to take up on any questions that have been asked. We shall start by asking Professor Guante. I know you have not raised up your hand, but I will request you to answer to what Dr. Walter Odhiambo and Dr. Burugu have asked. They raised questions that I could categorize into 8. The first one was criteria of selection of ERC members. The other one was the slow responses. Then there was the reviewers who need to give room for or accommodation for disagreements. There was a willing platform for peer engagement, ERC usurping the role of the supervisors, stakeholders input, and whether we are supposed to use guidelines or we also have rules. Flexibility is also important. Then recruiting members from both institutions, and especially the issue of the CV from the University of Nairobi. The issue of good clinical practice has already been responded to by Dr. Burugu. So Professor Guante, kindly take on those questions to respond, as I encourage our team to please respond to the questions using the Q&A place. Just type the answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wagoro, for facilitating this session. And thank you for the panelists for bringing up issues of concern. Now, I'll start by saying that the best way for us to engage and move forward is for us to be accommodating to each other's views. Okay, because we all are individuals with feelings and perceptions. I think most of the negative comments relating to the ERC are based on perceptions and the lack of proper information. Information can either be obtained by directly interacting with the ERC or by connecting with a person even outside ERC who has a proper understanding of what ERC is all about. But we have taken all the comments in good faith, and we invited these panelists because we felt that there was a need for them to express themselves and bring to light their experiences with the ERC. Thank you, Walter, and thank you, Dr. Murugu. Now, yes, we have a strict criteria on how to recruit members to the ERC. That is there. That is one of our standard operating procedures. And the recruitment process is not done just internally by the ERC. We actually request for CVs from potential members, and these CVs are tabled at the full ERC committee meeting. They are vetted, and after that, the CVs are submitted to the appointing institution for consideration. And when the appointing institution is satisfied, they actually issue a letter of appointment. If not, they turn down the request for appointment. The issue of the slow response, yes, it is there. And let me say, not all proposals have been affected. It's only that probably maybe a third of the proposals that we have reviewed that have lagged behind in terms of response time. But we take the blame for that slow response. As the Secretariat, we usually try to monitor the progress of the review, and where we feel that the review process has been overly delayed, we actually even sometimes withdraw the proposal from the particular reviewer and redistribute it to another person with a request to expedite the review. So we also try to have internal mechanisms for addressing this slow process of review. But remember, the slowness can either be from the ERC or from the researcher. Remember, in my presentation, I said there are times when we even give the ERC comments to the researchers in a timely manner, but the researcher takes ages to respond to those comments. And there are times when even after the resubmission, there might even be a second request for revision, which means that we are waiting for a second resubmission. And again, that is time lost. So when the researcher also delays in responding to the comments, that is time lost. But when the blame comes, the researchers never want to take that blame. Or the blame for the slow response is targeting the ERC. What I'm saying is that we also should request that the researchers also take a bit of the blame. And let's try to keep timelines both ways. We shall try as much as possible to request for timely review from the ERC. Remember, initially, our review period was 8 weeks, and we reduced that to 4 weeks, just to try and fast track the review process. So something is being done. Now, how do we identify reviewers for the various proposals? Remember, we said that we allocate 2 reviewers for the proposals. We normally consider a primary reviewer who is relatively conversant with the field of research, and then another reviewer to support. We are not saying that we know it all. We might be dealing with a subject that is not very well known to the reviewers. And if this happens, and the researcher gets comments that either are not clear to him, or they look like the reviewer did not really understand the subject matter, the researcher is free to actually link up with the secretariat or even call the chair. I'm always available to express their dissatisfaction on the quality of the review. And where necessary, we shall even request for a one-on-one meeting with the researcher so that this researcher is given an opportunity to express himself or herself and give us an in-depth understanding of the proposal. And this has been done severally, okay? So I'm requesting the members, if there is need for you to interact directly one-on-one with the ERC, please make a request and it will be honored. There was also the request for stakeholders input. I did not understand exactly what was meant by stakeholders input. Yes, when it comes to issues of flexibility, yes, we try to be as flexible as possible. For example, when it is the issue of plagiarism, I remember the plagiarism similarity index is set at 15%. But there are times when a study can justify a higher similarity index score. For example, if a research is involving, let's say a researcher has been involved in a series of similar studies over a period of time, and the current study is building on those previous studies. So there is likely to be a lot of similarity in the literature review with respect to those previous studies that have been carried out. Clinical trials also, they can be able to justify a higher similarity index. So we are flexible, okay? We are flexible on that. And no one will be penalized, but if the similarity index cannot be justified, then we shall request for it to be adjusted downwards. The request for CVs, I can assure you that for the members of staff from the University of Nairobi and the KNH will not demand for the CVs of the staff to be submitted. So Walter, I think I need to assure you that you do not need to attach your CVs when you are probably supervising a student. It's only for foreign researchers that CVs are required, or persons that are external to KNH and UN. That is when CVs are required. And GCP, I think that was explained. Is there anything else that I've not covered? Let me know. Dr. Wagoro, is there anything else I've left out?
I think you have covered most of the areas of concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, now we'll go to the Q&A section, and I want to remove a few questions and ask Dr. Amugune if she can. So I'll give 5 questions and then they can be answered at once before we take others. Betwell is asking if there's the process of reviewing academic protocol is different from that one of protocol for grants. Anonymous attendee is asking if reviews are only done by face-to-face or do we have options of emails? Peterson wants to know the difference between ethical clearance and research permit clearance. Winfrida is asking about options for research funding. Samuel wants to know how the ERC quantifies amount of harm. Kenfrey asks what are the qualifications of an appropriate PI? And Dr. Wilberforce is asking how research misconduct is managed. So Dr. Mugune, please, over to you.
Quite a mouthful, but I'll try. Some I didn't get. The first one I know is about academic and grant proposals. I believe they are reviewed in a similar manner, but you see, there are issues that will arise depending on what the author has put forward. So like in a grant, we'll have more of the issues about the study team, the issues about the budgets and all that, the compensation of the study participants. So the issues will arise as per what they have stated as they are being reviewed. But the processes, the timelines are the same. I don't know whether I've answered them, but when you are reviewing a document, you ask yourself questions depending on what the person has stated. So that's all I can say. Now, there's something about ethical clearance and permit. I think the person must be talking with the current situation of NACOSTI and us. And I think there was also a question about NACOSTI and ERCs. I have answered on the chat that NACOSTI, and I said it during my presentation, NACOSTI is the big body that covers us as far as the legal mandates are concerned. So they accredited us, all the ERCs. Any ERC worth its name must be accredited by NACOSTI. And we work under their mandate. We give them reports. They have to approve our reviewers list and everything. They review all, even our SOPs and everything. So we work under them. So after we've given you an ethical clearance, they still have this wider mandate that you must go for, what do they call it? I think a permit. So that's something that has arisen from their side. It's not us. So because that's a legal and regulatory issue, you have to handle with them. I think that's the difference. And then the issue of how do you quantify harm? And then the person, I think if I remember, they were talking that it is subjective. I don't think it is subjective. As we said, we look at, okay, we don't like going to harm. Actually, harm shouldn't arise, but we look at risk. Risk is that probability that harm is likely to occur. So we look at the probable risks from the study, and we look at the benefits that the person or the community will benefit from the study. And you do a balance, and you come up with what you think is the best choice. And as Prof said, whatever one reviewer comes up with, the other one comes up with, those reviews are brought to the full committee. The committee now makes a decision on actually what should come to you. So by the time you see a comment, you should be very reassured that it's not even what the reviewer alone did. The reviewer subjected to a committee, and the committee by consensus agreed that you should clarify. So it has gone through a lot of people looking at the issue. It's not so much somebody subjective. And then there's the issue of misconduct. Misconduct, we have one level of misconduct. We can handle it at the ERC level. Like as Prof said, we can cancel your study and all those things. But of course, like if it's an academic issue, we have the way of reporting you to your academic institution. If you are a practitioner, we can now report you to your where you practice, the hospital, and they'll now take you through the normal misconduct procedures. But those that we can handle at our level, like canceling your study or giving a pause to your study, those ones we handle. Others we have now to escalate to the next level. Thank you, Miriam. I think that is all. I can't remember any other. I think I did capture some. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mugune. You have answered most of the questions. And I also
Miriam,
yes.
just allow me to make just one more comment.
Thank you, Prof. Yes, go ahead.
There was an issue of the need for insurance cover. Now, let me say that we don't require insurance cover for all research participants. Insurance cover is required for participants that are involved in clinical trials, and particularly clinical trials that are interventional and they're associated with significant risk. That is when insurance cover is required. I think it is clear, and Dr. Mburugu, I think you are the one who brought up that matter. Insurance cover is not required for all studies. Then there was the issue of the clearance certificate and approval and a research permit. Now, at the ERC, remember I said that we review different categories of research proposals for the undergraduate proposals. These are students at undergraduate, taking undergraduate courses, either degree courses or diploma courses. These ones, we give them what we call a clearance letter, which is not as detailed as an approval, okay? And this is because their research is considered to be of a lower level, scientific level. Even the review period for such proposals is shorter, I think it's 2 weeks. But for studies above, from masters and above, and also for studies involving members of staff, collaborative studies, and clinical trials, all those ones we give an approval, a standard approval with very, very clear requirements on what needs to be done, when and how, and the kind of documents that should be used during the implementation of that study. Okay, including having the endorsement and the stamp appended to the final proposal that is approved by the ERC, so that you can actually now be able to make copies, let's say for the approved consent forms that have been stamped and endorsed, and then you can use those ones in the field. So if we come in the field and find that you are using unapproved documents, including the data collecting tools, you'll be penalized. And if you are using consent documents that were not approved and stamped, you'll be penalized. I wanted to make that clear. And for NACOSTE, they are the ones that issue a research permit, but the research permit from NACOSTE does not fully cover you to move ahead and conduct your study. You still have to get an ERC approval. Okay, that needs to be clear.
Thank you, Prof. It's now 4:30. I know there are a few questions that are still pending. Some are similar to what has been answered, so I believe the persons who asked those questions are satisfied. I also want to acknowledge that we have attendees from international space. Thank you for coming. And I also want to acknowledge that there are many other comments that are positive, where we are reading that the ERC was able to handle some of the researchers with a lot of dignity. And I think that is a positive comment. So now I want to hand over to Professor Amayo to continue with the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wagoro. Mine is very brief. I'd just like to thank the two ERC presenters, our chair, Professor Guante, and the secretary of the ERC, Dr. Amugune, for the elaborate presentations, which I think helped clarify a lot about the processes at the ERC. I would also like to thank the panelists for being very candid with their experiences and sharing their experiences as researchers. They're representing the research stakeholder arm, and the rest of the participants, especially those who gave their views, questions, and comments, and in the QA. I think we have taken this very seriously, and that the ERC will continue to endeavor to make sure that the research process is effective and in tandem with the expectations of both the research participant and the researchers, with a view to ensuring that there is a high level of research in Kenya. So with that, I would like to bring this webinar to a close, and thank you once again.
Dr. Professor Amayo.
Yes, Chair.
I know there are one or two members of the ERC that probably would like to make one or two comments. Dr. Knhun, John, are you with us? Would you wish to say something before we close?
Just to thank all the presenters and the panelists and all those who have attended. It has been really a very great session. And also it has been very good to hear from our panelists so that we hear also about their concerns. Thank you everyone who has been part of this.
Thank you. Any other member that would wish to say something before we close? We don't want to lock anyone out. Any other ERC member present? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I note that there is no other member that would wish to say something. So, Prof, you can go ahead and close the session.
Thank you very much. So it is, again, it has been an afternoon well spent, and our expectation is that this will raise the bar with regard to the quality of research that is undertaken within the country. Thank you very much. And have a good evening.